swallowed the red pill back in 2008 and began reporting the news in front of a camera in 2019. In that time, we've seen a complete upheaval in world politics. The battle lines have changed between the illusion of left versus right to the reality of globalism versus nationalism. Despite all the information, the truth and the lies, there are two very distinct pathways emerging. Should we follow Labor and Liberal to a dystopic one-world government, or do we fight for our nationalism, unlock our hidden resources wealth and build a new Australia? With the world teetering on a knife's edge, should we solidify our relationship with the USA and become the 51st state? This is my mission statement here on Australian National Review, and I welcome you to black pill me as hard as you can as we determine our future together. This is the 51st state. Hello and welcome to the 51st state, coming out of Australia and asking questions that many are saying or thinking. Can you even say that anymore in the great world of censorship? Where are we in the world today when, well, Jimmy Kimmel gets a 4-day ban, but apparently it's the left who are being punished by the dictators of the right? Well, it just seems to be all upside down at the moment. Of course, that's just the way the world is. But what we do here on this show, ask big questions, consider big topics, mostly from a perspective of what comes next after the great collapse and where are we headed? Are things going to improve or are they not going to improve? What kind of world do we really live in? What kind of world do we want? If we can restructure everything, why would we want it to go backwards, which it has been for a very long time, the trajectory downwards? Why can't it go up? And the big boogeyman, climate change, that no matter how much we spend on anything to do with climate change here in Australia, as Craig Kelly said, we can't improve things by not more than 0.00007 degrees. Just can't do it. So why do we persist? So many things to talk about. And in today's show, in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to my guest, Josh Bernstein, who is a very talented commentator who's been doing this for a very long time, to talk about so much news that's coming out of the US, and particularly on this show because it all concerns us here in Australia. Climate change, for example, just one of them. Censorship, another one. What about the idea of political violence? Another one, given that at the rallies recently in Australia, it's always one side that's considered to be violent and the other doesn't matter. Why do we have machete attacks happening in Victoria and you can't talk about it if you announce who it was that performed the attack? And you're considered racist for stating facts. So what happens here in Australia is almost the same as what happens in the US one way or another. It's the same trickle-on down effect. At the same time, our Prime Minister is taking selfies with Donald Trump, for goodness sake. Where are we in the world when world leaders, Albo, has to take selfies to prove his worth? Maybe we just need to replace him with someone sensible, someone who is thinking about Australians and not himself. And we'll get on to all of that in the show today. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and I will introduce you to Josh Bernstein on the other side. Don't go anywhere. This is the 51st State.
Australian National Review is Australia's first real free and independent press. One with no editorial control by the elite, but a publication that can generate critical thinkers and critical debate, and hold those spreading mistruths and deliberate propaganda in mainstream media to account. News with a difference that will be educational, compelling, and create a platform for political and social change in this country, and address the real issues facing this country and the world.
to the 51st State. Josh Bernstein is a TV talk show host. He's a news anchor and a political commentator. Josh has been a guest on over 4,000 shows over the past decade and has been called a political savant by the late American radio legend Barry Farber. He's also he's an author, and he is part of the JBU show on Substack. Let's bring him in for you right now. Josh Bernstein, welcome to the 51st State.
How are you doing? Great to be back on the program with you. You know, I got to say, between you, Jason, and Mike, and Sky News, I might gain a Australian accent here pretty soon. I've been doing a lot of Australian media, and I love Australia.
Well, I tell you what, the next thing we're going to have to do is get you in a Kubra hat. I mean, you're part of the furniture, and it's wonderful to have you on all these shows. You're right. You know, I see on Mike's show, Mike Ryan there on The World Today, and Sky News recently as well. Absolutely brilliant, Josh. We haven't spoken since Charlie Kirk's murder, certainly in the last few days, and so we will talk a little bit about that today, amongst other things. But you would have thought that would hold the news cycle for some time, but the amount of news coming out of the US at the moment is at a rate I don't think any of us have seen ever in our lifetimes. How are you sort of digesting what's coming through on a daily basis? Is your workload increasing, for example? Are you spending more time at the desk? How are you dealing with what's coming each day?
Well, I always say that an hour in politics is a week in politics. A week in politics is a month in politics. A month in politics is a year or even longer. News cycles change constantly, and you have to be up on everything. Right now, we've seen today, it looks like Big Tish is going to be indicted here pretty soon. James Comey is going to be indicted. And this one's really interesting because he's going to be indicted for lying to Congress, which clearly he was. I think he's guilty of a lot more than that. But this crime in particular, actually the statute of limitations were up September 30th of 2025. So if we didn't get him in the next few days of an indictment, he would have beaten that one charge. I believe there's more charges to come because remember, the two most important words are criminal conspiracy. And a criminal conspiracy does not have a statute of limitations. And I do believe he'll be caught up in much more. But it's great to see that those two, I call them low-hanging fruits, will be indicted here pretty soon.
It's a massive deal, isn't it, when the head of the FBI and a prosecutor and attorney general can be indicted. And the fact that Letitia James on mortgage fraud, and this story that develops further because you have a prosecutor that is telling us that it's baseless. Trump dismisses this particular prosecutor and then announces Lindsay Hannigan to take over. What I found fascinating when doing a little bit of research on Lindsay Hannigan, she's a former runner-up in Miss Colorado, and it seems that the people in the Trump administration are all movie stars, if you will, one way or another. You know, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, Tulsi Gabbard, Lindsay Hannigan, Caroline Levitt. All of them could be on the cover of a magazine, one way or another. And so, if we are watching a movie, as many people say, the fact that we've got Pete Hegseth, who was former Fox News, Dr. Oz out there the other day with the Tylenol announcement, who was on the Oprah show for many years. I just find it extraordinary of what we're watching and this weird disposition between two sides in politics now. It's almost like we split, and one side believes one pathway, the other side believes another pathway, but all you're trying to do is get to the truth, and you can't both be off on tangents. One has to be real and one not. And we watching this show are pretty aware of what's happening, but it's the process by which you arrive at it that makes it so difficult. And, of course, the reaction from Jimmy Kimmel the other day to come out and blatantly lie to the American public by saying the alleged killer was MAGA, which was the real result that he was taken off air because you can't provide misinformation on air. It's part of the FCC ruling, and yet now it's playing the victim.
Absolutely. And look, I'll get to the first thing. President Trump is all about substance, but President Trump is also all about how someone looks, how they're perceived, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, and quite frankly, and the most important, can they defend the MAGA America First movement against the left-wing media and do it effectively and efficiently? And yes, because a lot of these people have had media and communications experience, they are able to articulate the America First principles and values and combat the left-leaning media in real time. We've seen that with all of them, and that's one thing that I wanted to point out. As far as Jimmy Kimmel is concerned, look, I think his contract is up in a couple of months, number one. Number two, you had Nexstar and Sinclair, thankfully, showing some testicular fortitude, and they said, sorry, but we're not gonna cave, and we're not gonna show your show. And so there were 66 markets that didn't show Jimmy Kimmel. And most of those, by the way, were in left-leaning areas, like, for instance, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Washington, D.C., many others as well. So I think what's going to happen here is they're going to realize that it's time for a change. The people are going to tune out. His ratings are going to crash even more. ABC is going to lose even more money. Disney and Mickey Mouse are going to go crazy. And guess what's going to happen? He's going to get axed anyway. And I think they're just not going to renew his contract. Perhaps they put him on now because they didn't want to deal with a lawsuit and litigation. But I'll tell you right now, there's no way they're going to renew him.
Yeah, look, that's extra information that many people weren't aware of. But Stephen Colbert, for example, was axed because the show was losing a fortune. $50 million a year was the number, and he was taking a $15 million salary. We learned that Jimmy Kimmel, somewhere over the $20 million mark salary. It's incredible. $88,000 an episode to be paid is just unbelievable when you consider the amounts of money. But, you know, if you are, you know, football players, baseball players, basketball players also get paid exorbitant amounts of money, and that's the price of stardom. But at the same time, you've got to be talented. And it's one thing to host a Tonight Show, but to have a team of a dozen writers who still can't be very funny, and you're out there literally reading lines. It's not quite the talent of being a superstar baseballer, you know, batting, incredible averages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we have so much to get on today, what I'd like to do perhaps is just let people know what we're going to cover in the show. For example, there's breaking news coming from O'Keefe Media in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. We'll get onto that shortly. I also want to talk to you about the hypocrisy of Jimmy Kimmel in relation to Robert De Niro, who was involved in a skit on the show. And if you're Robert De Niro, I'm going to show you in a while what a sad, pathetic character from an actor who I absolutely adored as a young kid growing up in my teens, watching all of these great films, you know, Goodfellas, The Untouchables, etc. And there were many, many more, even the comedies when he became a fairly accomplished comedy actor with Billy Crystal. Analyze This, Exactly, Meet the Fockers, etc. Certainly a talent, but it's such a hypocrite. And I wonder if someone got to him in the early days of the Trump presidency for his indiscretions that involved those headlines involved with particular brothels in Europe at the time where there was this case. And then, of course, it got quickly dropped. And I just wonder, with all the talk of Pizzagate and all the talk of Jeffrey Epstein, if this man with his so-called bravado, tough guy image was shown something, and that's why he's gone off the rails, because there he is at all the awards ceremonies, literally coming out going, F Trump. And he stands there like a 12-year-old brat in high school, just standing there having a tantrum. And everyone applauds this 80 octogenarian actor like he's something special, because that's the best you can do. We're going to get to that in just a moment. We're also going to talk about Comey. We're going to talk about Hillary Clinton, who's also in the news, how timely that they're wheeling her out to dish up another layer of hypocrisy. She's blaming the right, of course, for all the political violence, which of course she does. Hillary's never made a mistake in her life. She can't be blamed for anything. She is the one that, if there was ever royalty in the United States, she would be the one that would anoint herself with the crown to be Queen Elizabeth of the United States. It's just where we are. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is the Tylenol story, which I think is fascinating, because there is so much conflicting information. There is the typical, and I'm ranting on here, guys, but there's so much on either side, and people coming out now saying, but it's safe, but it's safe, but it's safe, and it's always safe. And I said it won't be very long before you see a pregnant woman coming out and swallowing Tylenol on camera. And I've got the clip for you in a moment. We're gonna
28 weeks pregnant. You know what I'm gonna take? Some Tylenol, acetaminophen. It's gonna work like a charm, and my baby won't have autism.
Well, I just call that child abuse in a different nature. There it is. There's the meme that we all saw. Now here we go. Check this out from 2017 from Tylenol themselves. We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. That's back in 2017. Let's give you another one. From Johns Hopkins, a Johns Hopkins study of umbilical cord blood found that babies with the highest acetaminophen, I can't even say the word, exposure were three times more likely to be diagnosed with autism or ADHD. This wasn't fringe science. It came from one of the most respected medical institutions in the world. So why are millions of women still being told it is risk-free? In Australia, ironically, it's called paracetamol. It's the same product, which is a lot easier to say. But you really have a problem, don't you, when you are going down this pathway of now pretending that something is safe when it's not. And then, of course, I've had people, say to me when I've shared this, there's a wonderful clip, and if we have time, I should play it for you. It's about 4 minutes. This lady explaining exactly what it does in the reduction of glutathione and therefore what happens with inflammation in the brain. And this leads directly to the cause of autism. And it's only part of it. So the typical response that you get, I've had 3 children, this lady says, I don't have any of them, and I took Tylenol, and none of my kids have autism. Many people that smoke that don't get lung cancer. There are many people that took COVID vaccines that didn't get myocarditis. It doesn't mean that that's the case. And we're always talking about percentages and increased risk. But isn't it funny the bias that always comes through in these stories when people want to defend a position? And of course, people are guilty on both sides of it. But the left hypocrisy is just beyond anything I've ever seen before, literally beyond. And this is just one part of the story, Josh.
Well, let me start with this. If you think about it, this could have been solved, excuse me, over 20 years ago, right? Many, many years ago. They could have taken the time and said, gee, why are we getting an increase in autism? It's happening every year. 1 in 20,000. Now it's 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 1,000. Now it's 1 in 500. Now it's 1 in 100. Now it's 1 in 31. Now it's 1 in 12 or whatever it might be. What is going on? And I like the fact that RFK Jr. and Bhattacharya and the rest of the people decided, why don't we take a look at the basics? Why don't we just take a look at the basics? There's been some studies. They have said in the past that you shouldn't have acetaminophen when you're pregnant because it can cause autism. Why don't we expand on that? Oh, wait a minute. I know why no one did it. Because the pain reliever industry is a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar industry. They make a ton of money. And so they never wanted to destroy or upset their funding base, right? All these politicians that are funded by Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and Tylenol and Bayer and aspirin and all these others, that's the reason no one ever did anything. This new administration said, you know what? Forget about all that. Let's actually figure out what's going on. And they did a study and they reviewed that study. They peer reviewed that study and they did placebos. They did real, in time where they actually gave people, and they found out through actual real science, right, that indeed it does affect the mothers and it affects the babies in particular. And so what's the worst that can happen? Let's just say, for argument's sake, it goes down from 1 in 12 to next year. There's data that shows it's now 1 in 1,100. Well, maybe then they're onto something. Perhaps maybe you should still keep those labels out there. And in a couple years from now all of a sudden it's 1 in 4,500. Now all of a sudden it's 1 in 10,000. Now we understand that indeed that was the case. Maybe after 2 or 3 years, the numbers don't change. And maybe we go and we look for something else. But for these idiots to get on TikTok, which I absolutely said was going to happen within minutes of that press conference, especially because of how strongly worded President Trump said, don't take it, don't take Tylenol. He was very strong. So of course, these left-wingers are going to go, well, don't you tell me what to do. It's my body. I don't care if I have a child with autism. I'm going to guzzle down these Tylenols. So it's like, there's a meme out there that has a bunch of liberals jumping off of a cliff to their death. And then there's another thing that says, well, what happened? And the other one says, Trump said not to jump. So it's like, it's just, that's what they do. They do the opposite. They don't even care. It's just, I have to do whatever Trump says, I have to do the opposite of, regardless of whether or not it could affect me or my baby in the future. Mental illness, it's TDS.
Well, absolutely. But you know, it is a classic Trump move. He has been trying, along with all of us, to talk about autism and the causes for decades. And certainly as long as I have been in front of a camera, the same thing. And in a moment, I'm going to go to my interview with Del Bigtree on TNT Radio that I think is going to knock you over, Josh, and the audience. But this is the point. He got the world talking about the causes of autism, and leading with Tylenol is a genius ploy, because enough people will realize that the amounts of Tylenol taken across the, dare I use the pun, spectrum of people that are getting, with the number going from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 12. And of course, they always wheel out the usual excuses. There's no connection, correlation doesn't prove causation, and we have better diagnostic techniques, which I think is the ultimate nonsense argument I have ever heard of. Are you trying to tell me that in the past, a doctor couldn't tell a non-verbal child? A doctor couldn't tell a child looking off into the distance that couldn't be engaged? A doctor couldn't confirm that a 7-year-old boy was still in nappies? For goodness sake, don't argue that the toss saying that we have better diagnostic techniques today. So you're trying to tell me that 8% of all children always had autism, we just didn't know? Like it is such an abuse of the ability of authority and power and knowledge to say that we have better diagnostic techniques. It's just yet another throwaway. You know what? It is quite long. I might cut it short. I want you to see this clip from this lady explaining it. It's very important. We'll get into it. It's going to be a long show today, but I hope you stay with us because it is a blockbuster. Let's start with this clip now.
Peace, family. So let's talk about Tylenol. I'm literally out here in the garden, but the timing is what it is. So why is Tylenol associated with autism? First, if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I have a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from University of Michigan that was done in the Department of Immunology, and I have been studying the childhood schedule and injections for about 10 years hardcore now. So Tylenol is associated with autism because it depletes the body's major antioxidant, glutathione. Glutathione is what mops up inflammation in the body. And when the body is critically depleted of it, it either goes septic or, especially in young or premature infants, they can actually pass away. It can cause things like SIDS. So the maintenance of glutathione is extremely important. And even doing something like mom taking vitamin C as a supplement while she's nursing can be critical in helping mom and the baby to resupply glutathione. So what happens is if your body doesn't have enough glutathione, it gets extremely inflamed and it just can't handle cellular stress. And the inflamed state of the brain is what is highly associated with neurological disorders such as autism or ADHD. Now, that said, glutathione is extremely depleted when children get injections, when your immune system is hyperactivated. So we know this even in pregnant mothers. If their immune system is hyperactivated, it could be by an injection, or it could just be by a very severe infection, like something like appendicitis, is going to cause a lot of inflammation and deplete glutathione. So it isn't just Tylenol that is going to deplete glutathione. It is any form of acute immune activation, which is going to include all of these injections on the childhood schedule. So make no mistake, this immune activation is going to deplete glutathione. And if you combine an immune activation, like a well child visit, with Tylenol, it is a double whammy, completely depleting that child's glutathione supplies and really making it very likely that the body is not going to be able to fend off brain inflammation. And so we know that many injections are associated with encephalitis. So most of the time the body can, that just means an inflammation of the brain. We know most of the time the body can get ahead of that and use intracellular things like glutathione to reduce inflammation. But if the body doesn't have those stores, that brain inflammation is going to rage on, and it is going to continually deplete the body's system of things like vitamin D, vitamin A, and zinc, and glutathione, and eventually the child's body just can't handle it anymore. And some children may actually pass away. Others are going to develop all kinds of problems, including things like autism.
A couple of points I want to bring up quickly. She mentioned SIDS, which of course is another one with unknown cause. She's mentioned vitamins A, D, and zinc, and of course they were also recommended by the doctors that were censored during COVID to build up the body, to restrict the viral replication. And so they're saying that counteracts the inflammation, the glutathione. But of course, the other thing was that some of these doctors were also recommending to take glutathione to rebuild after the COVID period as well, which is really interesting. So there's a real crossover here. And a lot of it is the lack of understanding about brain chemistry and what's happening. And it seems that there's also almost a willful ignorance in this space. Like, you want to tell me that something's safe, thalidomide for goodness sake, exactly. And yet at the same time, you want to tell me that an 800% or an 800-fold increase in the rate of autism is purely genetic, environmental, but we don't want to know because knowing is a bad thing. Not knowing and living with the status quo is apparently what people want to accept. There's so many things wrong with this, but at the end of the day, if a child is banging its head against the wall, if the child is nonverbal, if a child is in nappies, and people will say, oh, but that's an extreme case. I had someone the other day, and I knew this was the other one that was going to come out, Josh, but autism is good. The kids have superpowers. They're really intelligent, for goodness sake. That's the excuse. And I knew that would come out as well. But that's why it's called a spectrum, everyone. There is a huge difference here. And if you're relying on a spectrum to create a diagnosis, that is just an opinion just at the same time. And then again, rubbing the fingers together to indicate the more money in the system. There is so much wrong, but I think that clip opens the door now that you're allowed to talk about it once and for all. And that lady was providing information that was simple, easy to understand, but perfectly makes sense.
Yeah, look, I'll pray for her because if you remember many years ago, anyone that talked about the truth about what could possibly be causing autism or trying to cure cancer, a lot of those folks have ended up mysteriously disappeared or dead or found, shot or found hung or found in a brook somewhere. I mean, I believe that the pharmaceutical industries likely may have hired guns out there to go after these naturopathic and holistic doctors that refuse to use, big pharmaceuticals and medicine and things like that to try to solve some of these health issues and health ailments. That's number one. But number two, look, I think that she is somebody that obviously has studied this, can understand the body structure, understands what these certain things that are depleted in the mother and in the baby can do to the child once they're born. But it is a spectrum from that case. I mean, one of the world's richest men, I think he's either number one or number two. I think he might have recently been overtaken, but Elon Musk is someone that has Asperger's, and he's obviously very functioning and can do everything and is smart and has intellect. But you're right. There are others that are nonverbal that just can't communicate and they get frustrated and they're socially awkward and things like that. And it's sad because if you think about it, if we just do a couple of different things where they're not going to make any money and actually you're going to lose money, but it'll save people's lives and increase people's ability to live normal lives and not have some of these neurological issues and ailments, then that's what we should be doing. We should not be looking at it from a dollar point perspective rather than what's good for the health. And this administration certainly is clearly not focused on bringing in revenue. They're focused on finding cures.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a big difference. Now, let's get on now to Jimmy Kimmel and this skit from last night's show with Robert De Niro, and we will advance this conversation further because we're talking about the same dreaded 6-letter word, autism. Take a look.
I think what words can never harm you.
Oh, well, they can harm you now. Just make sure you pick the right words. Capiche?
Okay, yeah, I guess I capiche, but I don't think... Oh, it sounds like you got a call there, huh?
Hi, handsome. Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Okay. You got it, sir. You got it. Bye.
What did he say?
Look, I got to go. A couple of cases of Tylenol fell off a truck, and now I got to figure out how to put autism in them.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that sounds tricky. So good luck with that, sir.
Good luck with you, and I'll be watching you, Kimmel.
You know, you're allowed to make fun of yourself, self-deprecating humour. It's certainly popular in Australia. In America, Woody Allen was the master of it. But this is something else because of what we're about to show you. Now, I'm going to play for you 2 clips now. This is from my interview, Josh, with Del Bigtree in 2024 on TNT Radio. I'm going to play it. We're going to watch it from the side. Just take a look at this. This is him talking about the movie Vaxxed, and then we're going to talk.
Go ahead and play your video.
Here it is.
40 other films in the sort of documentary category, and the gates of hell opened up. Every mainstream news outlet in the world was attacking Tribeca Film Festival. How could you have this movie? Children are going to die. It was absolutely crazy. So there was already this firestorm going on when Robert De Niro, I don't know, it was probably 3 or 4 days into this really incredible attack by mainstream media, stepped forward and announced that, you know, of course, he was one of 2 founders of Tribeca, and he said, we are going to screen this film. And then he said something that no one knew really in the world before that moment. He said, my wife and I have a child with autism. We believe that vaccines have contributed to that diagnosis, and this film will play. I remember I had friends in Hollywood that reached out to me right after that and said, well, I thought you were screwed, Del, but you're made, man. Robert De Niro just backed you up. You're good to go. I really did think that. And then, but about 74 hours later, we still got kicked out of the festival. It was ABC News had just interviewed me. They were talking about the most controversial film Tribeca had ever had. And then in the moment before that was going to air on the news, we got told they're pulling you from the festival, which just shows you, I mean, this is how controversial it was that, you know, one of the founders, arguably one of the most popular actors in the world, supported our film. And even that wasn't enough to keep us in that festival lineup. When our distribution company was arguing with with Tribeca's people, they kept saying, why are you kicking this film out of the festival? And they said, well, there's some inaccuracies in the science. And so our producers and everybody would say, well, what inaccuracies? I mean, certainly our filmmakers should be allowed to defend this film. Tell us what the problem is and let us show you their data. And remember, these festivals like Tribeca had screened Fahrenheit 9/11 that basically accused George Bush of bombing the World Trade Center. So, you know, obviously they'll let things slide in a documentary, you know, wherever you are on that topic. They're used to controversial issues. Why this one? And we pressured them, and apparently about an hour of arguing, they finally said, fine. Sloan Kettering has been one of our, you know, major donors since the day we started, and they don't want this film to screen. And that's what it's all about. It was a pharmaceutical sponsor that got us kicked out of the festival.
How about that, Josh?
It's all about follow the money.
Isn't that extraordinary? So that is an admission from the filmmaker himself, Del Bigtree. And I think what I'll do is I'll upload that to my page, channel51.com.au, the full interview with Del. But there's more that I've got to show you, because the conversation then went on. I wanted him to recap exactly what he believed he achieved in the film as opposed to what I had seen. And for many who still haven't seen it because they were warned off, it is an amazing film. And interestingly, wasn't it, you saw the comment that came up there at the bottom of the screen, which I've edited on there, where it said we didn't think it added anything into it. Well, I'm going to let you guys be the judge right now. Let's play the second part of this interview where he describes exactly what the movie achieved. Those that may not have seen the film, the idea behind it is that in real time, you're recording conversations with the CDC that are revealing that the data sets keep changing because something is seeping out, and that is that it's not friendly to the idea that the MMR is actually as good as it's meant to be. And you'll be aware of the use of my language here to avoid the censorship that comes through. It's a little bit coded, but this is the point, isn't it? That that the data was being manipulated to tell us something was safe when it probably wasn't.
Well, if you're worried about, how you're going to say something, I'm probably not the right guest to have because I haven't danced around this at all. But I'll tell you this: at the center of this, the film that we made, Vaxxed, was a whistleblower from inside the CDC. He was their epidemiologist, so he was literally the guy crunching all the numbers. They were doing a study back in 2000, looking at a group of about 1,500 children from Atlanta. So it had a very large African-American community in it. So a lot of African-American boys and girls. But what they were looking at was it was really based on the fact that Dr. Andrew Wakefield in England had made the statement that he believed the MMR was somehow causally connected to the MMR vaccine. And so the CDC was doing this study to try and refute that, to say there's no problem with the MMR, and it was a timing study. What they were looking at, they were asking the question, if this vaccine does contribute to autism, then the next question would be, the earlier you get it, does it make it more dangerous? And so what they looked at was children that got the MMR vaccine, before or at about 12 months, and those that waited till after 18 months. And what they discovered was about a 4.5% increase in autism amongst those that got the vaccine early, which was shocking, and it was irrefutable. And so what the CDC ended up doing, based on what this whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson, said, and by the way, he didn't just say it, he provided us all of the original documents, all of the strategy that they were going to use in this study, and they committed scientific fraud. They kicked half the kids off the study in the middle of the study to try and change the outcome and sort of erase this problem that they were seeing. That's what the film is about. The film, ultimately, I would say, some people say Vaxxed proves that the MMR causes autism. That's not true. I'm very scientific, and I'm very clear on what we did prove. What we did prove was that your top scientists at the CDC did a study to try and show that the MMR was safe and not connected to autism. And that study went so far south, they committed scientific fraud to hide that evidence. And what is really disturbing about that study is that was the last study ever done in the United States of America. This fraud went forward, and they ended up hiding all of the problems with it. They knew that it looked like it was causally related to autism. Now, let's be clear. It was only 1,500 kids. That should have triggered more studies. They definitely saw the red flag of all red flags, and they should have said, let's get deeper into this. Instead, they did the opposite. They whitewashed the whole study. They kicked kids off the study to manipulate and get what they wanted out of that study. And in the end, that study was used in the United States of America to say, that's it. It's over. We've proved that vaccines don't cause autism. We're never investing another red cent in this. So when we hear on the news, oh, that's the most studies that's ever been done on vaccines and autism, it's an absolute lie, and not one red penny has been spent on the connection between vaccines and autism from our regulatory agencies in America since 2000. So 24 years now, even though somewhere between 50 to 80%, depending on the polls, of parents of autistic children believe they watched it happen with their own eyes after vaccination. So when you think about it, this is like having eyewitnesses to a crime. 80% of them are pointing to one person in that lineup. The CDC steps in, takes that person out of the lineup, and says, now who is it? And that's what they've been doing for 24 years. And you'll hear them on the news say, well, we don't really know what's causing autism, but one thing we do know is that it's not vaccines.
Unbelievable.
I thought you'd appreciate that, Josh, but that is blockbuster.
Brandy Vaughn, actually, I interviewed with her twice. She had the organization learntherisk.org, and she was close with Dell. I never got a chance to interview Dell, but Brandy Vaughn is now no longer with us because I believe Big Pharma killed her, because she was someone that was a major, opponent against vaccines and autism and trying to uncover the truth as Del Bigtree has done. And like I said, it's pretty sad. It's terrible, but it's profits over people. That's what it is.
It's just next level, but to be able to chronicle this is part of our journey here in the independent media to put these things together. And if you're watching this and you've just seen it, please leave a comment. Please share it if you can, one way or another, because the only way that things change is purely eyeballs, and you've got to share as hard as you possibly can. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk about censorship, and specifically as it's affected Josh himself. Don't go anywhere. This is the 51st State. Welcome back to the 51st State. My guest this hour, Josh Bernstein, and we've covered a lot of ground, but now this is probably a little bit personal for many people out there, but specifically to Josh, bringing you back in now. Josh, the announcement this week from Google and relating to YouTube in relation to people that have been censored, and many of us have been censored. Many people have been taken down with their ridiculous 3 strikes rule. On my own personal thing, what I found that rather than being taken out, every time I got to the second strike, and when I got a second strike, once it was for sharing a video that 18 months after I'd posted it of the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, specifically saying, we don't have compulsory vaccination in Australia. 18 months after the clip was out there, they took it down. God knows how they found it. Like, how did that come to their attention? And I appealed it. I said, it's the Prime Minister of the country is stating a law in an appeal. And they go, no, we're taking it down anyway. So what I would do is I'd get 2 strikes and then I just wouldn't do anything for 3 months and effectively became sort of inert and no one watched my channel and that was the end of it. But for other people, you just kept going and going because you have to, because you're monetized. This is your income. What happened in your case, Josh?
Oh, goodness. Around, I would say 2017, that's when YouTube started to change their algorithms, and they were purposely hiding conservatives' videos. And so I went from millions and millions and millions of views to a trickle, and the trickle went down to about maybe 400,000 to 300,000. And then all of a sudden it was like 80,000 and 60,000 per video views. And I'm going, what is going on here, right? So finally, I got a letter from them, and they said, due to your content, we have demonetized your channel. You can still put up video and all that, but we will no longer monetize your channel. Now, at the time, I was honestly probably making $7,000-8,000 a month. I mean, it was, it was pretty decent, actually. Yeah, and it was, and I was doing pretty well. And so once they demonetized me, I opened up a Patreon account at the time. And I basically had a message at the end of every one of my videos on YouTube. Hey, I've been demonetized. Please support me on Patreon. And so I brought some people over there, and I wasn't making nearly as much, maybe 5,000, 6,000. And I did that for a while. And then, of course, what happened in 2019 is when they removed the channels because I was showing votes being switched live on CNN in the Matt Bevin, Andy Beshear, Kentucky governor's race. They were literally taking votes away in a split second from Matt Bevin and giving them to Andy Beshear. And I was circling it, slowing it down, circling it, putting it out there. And that video had about 900,000 views in about 35, 36 hours. And from that, I lost both channels. That was it, gone. So from that, I'm now on the rest of social media. About a week after that, this is about 3 weeks now before the election, there was a video put out by James O'Keefe that actually showed ballot harvesting in Minnesota, in particular in Little Mogadishu, which is the largest Somali population in the entire world outside of the country of Somalia. And Ilhan Omar and her chief of staff were part of this, and they were ballot harvesting. They were doing illegal activity. So I was covering it, of course, and from that I did a full show on her. I explained that she was one of only 2 people in the Minnesota state legislature before she became a member of Congress that actually voted for female genital mutilation, okay? And again, she's a woman herself. Then when she got to Congress, she forced Congress to pass laws to allow her to wear her hijab in Congress. Then I talked about her associations with CARE, which has been designated as a terrorist organization in 2014 by the United Arab Emirates. I showed where she was getting money and funneling money in from Iran and Qatar and elsewhere. And so then I, of course, exposed where she came from and how she lied on the N-400 forms and said that she was never part of a totalitarian or authoritarian regime, which was not true. Of course she was. Her father, Muhammad Nuar, was the propaganda minister for Saeed Bayar's dictatorship that was in the process of being overthrown. If they didn't leave Mogadishu, I don't know if they stole the Omar name or bought it from somebody, but if they didn't leave, they would have been executed. They came to America, and then she infiltrated Congress. I said she should be investigated, she should be indicted, she should be arrested, and she should go to prison, or better yet, executed. Well, that was all it took. Josh Bernstein calls for the execution of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. By the way, real name Ilhan Nuar Saeed Elmi. Yes, she did indeed marry her brother. I've seen the marriage certificates. And so from that, I lost everything, because she took the article that Right Wing Watch put out in Newsweek and Democratic Underground and Daily Cause. They all wrote about it. And she started putting it out with her millions and millions of followers. And they started attacking support at Amazon Prime, support at Roku Television, support at X, or Twitter at the time, support at Facebook, support at this, support at that. And within about a 48-hour period, I was completely ghosted. I mean, I went from millions to nothing. And so it's been a 5-year hell living in political purgatory, basically. I started a website immediately, and I kept that going for about 4.5 years. But when you have had 37 DDoS attacks of blunt force coming from China, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, Canada, I helped start the Canadian truckers convoy. I had 15 levels of security on that website. We're talking military grade security, security that you would find on Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or the country of Norway. Okay, that type of security. And finally, it got too expensive. I ended up spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $160,000 in 5 years between security and attacks. I couldn't afford it anymore. And so sadly, had to shut down the website, opened up my Substack, jbushow.substack.com, had an opportunity to write my first book, Preserving Liberty. And during that process, I have tried numerous times to appeal to YouTube to give me back my channels. And every single time they said no. So I probably appealed 7 or 8 times. And finally, I just was like, all right, it's not going to happen. So I'm just going to let it go. Jim Jordan comes out with the mention the other day. So I immediately say, Dear YouTube, in light of Representative Jim Jordan's findings and Alphabet's recent statement through King and Spalding, I respectfully request reinstatement of my terminated account, ID number, blah, 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 removed under now retired COVID-19 and election integrity policies. As a verified public figure, I built the channel in 2015 to more than 338,000 subscribers with over 97 million views and over 3,400 videos. My content focused on political analysis and commentary, adding value to public discourse and often cited by other media outlets. YouTube has acknowledged past enforcement influenced by external pressure and now offers creators impacted by outdated policies a path to return. I respectfully request full reinstatement, including restoration of all of my subscribers and all my video content. Thank you for your time and consideration, Josh Bernstein. And so I sent that. And then, of course, I got a message today stating what you would think. Where is it? Let me find it here. Here it is. Hi, Josh Bernstein Show. We have reviewed your appeal for the following channel, The Josh Bernstein Show. We reviewed your channel carefully and have confirmed that it violates our community guidelines. We know this is probably disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. How this affects your channel? Well, we won't be putting your channel back up on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube team. So from that, I reached out to Jim Jordan, reached out to all of his offices, reached out to him, the House Judiciary Committee, on X and everything else. And I'm not going to stop. I am going to continue until I can reach somebody and say, look, as a public figure, a media personality, I deserve to have my right to freedom of speech. No FBI agent showed up at my home. They took a 24-minute video. They cut it down to 42 seconds and made me sound like a psycho. But the reality is, if you look at the context of what I said, I didn't say anything remotely close, but it didn't matter because they all attacked me, and that's what happened. So I would love to see her deported, denaturalized, put in prison. I'll say it again 5 years later. I don't care. But the reality is I need to get that channel back, because if I can get that channel back with all my people, then what I'll do is I'll just take the snippets from Substack, which are a minute long or whatever, and I'll put them up each day. And hopefully the ant trail would come to my Substack, because that's really going to be where my home base is. And again, it's jbushow.substack.com. If anyone wants to join it, please do. $5 a month gets you a free PDF copy of this book. And again, the book has been endorsed by Roger Stone, who worked for 4 presidents, Alan Dershowitz, the world-renowned defense attorney, and the Congressman Paul Gosar from the Freedom Caucus wrote the foreword to it.
It's an incredible story. And at the end of the day, the argument is going to be that you somehow endorsed political violence, and it is entirely untrue, taken out of context. You're simply calling for justice, for appropriate justice.
Team read this the way YouTube reads it, or are they going to understand, maybe watch the full video? I don't know where it is, because it was many years ago. I don't know who has it, but maybe they can find that video, or they could demand it. Maybe they could subpoena the entire video and then say, well, here's what he said. He said she should be investigated, she should be arrested, she should be indicted, she should be imprisoned, or better yet, executed. There's a lot different saying it like that than just saying it the one way. So I'm not confident, but I think it's worth a shot, especially now after what has happened. And by the way, X and I think Facebook just said too today that they're going to follow suit with what YouTube has quote unquote said they're doing. And so maybe we won't see as much censorship on those platforms moving forward. And one more thing, when the American businesses take over TikTok, I will be joining TikTok. That's 100% for sure. I won't do it now because everything that you put on TikTok is being held on servers in Shanghai by the CCP. And there's no way I could sit here with a straight face being anti-CCP, being attacked by the CCP multiple times, dedicating an entire chapter in the book called The China Syndrome, and then be disingenuous and be on TikTok for views. I won't do it. I have more integrity than that. But once it's away from China, definitely going on TikTok.
Yeah, well, things have got to happen. Things have got to change. Look, there's so much more that that needs to be dealt with, and of course, the calls for violence on both sides. And we've learnt today that this particular fellow, identified as Joshua Jahn, was the fellow that has taken his own life after killing multiple people at an ICE facility. I'm going to play a short clip for it now.
Law enforcement, specifically the Dallas Police Department, for their quick and timely response. I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence. It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence, to include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack carried out against an immigration detention center in Alvarado, Texas. What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature. Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack. This will be a whole of government response. There will be no resource not utilized to bring all those individuals who are responsible to bring them to justice and to hold them accountable.
It's unbelievable that we are witnessing the return of the Wild West, that lawlessness and attacking authority is just considered to be the norm. But apparently, Josh, it's all of the right wing's fault, not the left wing. She's been wheeled out once again. I think the timing of it is interesting. Here she is. HRC.
We've got to stop demonizing each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I think most of that right now in our country's history is coming, from the right, coming from people who want to dominate. They want their point of view. Writing out slavery from history, that doesn't make it go away. We have got to stop with the finger pointing and the scapegoating.
Yeah. Just ask Vince Foster if she thinks it's coming from the right. Just ask the multitude of people that have disappeared and been shot and killed because of Kenkel's McPantsuit, as I like to call her. She's a disgusting excuse for a human being, number one. Number two, she should be in prison, as President Trump said in that debate a long time ago. I would assume that she's going to be part of this criminal conspiracy. Her husband is a disgusting, radical, extremist, sick rapist and pedophile. Hopefully that doesn't get this video taken down, but I'm just speaking from the heart here. And look at all these people. They're all on the left. Every single one of them is on the left. Charlie Kirk shooter, all these trans shooters, the Catholic school shooter, the last one, the one in Buffalo. I mean, they're all on the left. Every single one of them is on the left. There is no more of this both sides bull, what. And I think at this point right now, and President Trump has already signaled that he's working on it in the FBI and the Department of Justice, we need to smash, and I mean that, smash the funding for all of these people. And anyone that knew about anything online, including Charlie Kirk's assassination and all these others that we're talking about, Charlie Kirk dead at 31 on SoundCloud, just wait and watch the news in a couple, all those people need to be charged with accessory to murder and sent to prison for 5 to 10 years because they're also part of it. They're an accomplice to it. They didn't do anything to stop it. This last attack against ICE in Texas, again, guaranteed there is online communication. I believe, and I've said this before, there is an online trans-terrorist organization that is funding these people, and it probably leads all the way right up to the top, the echelon of the Democratic Party, and I have no problem saying that publicly. So let's hope that they take down the Open Society Institute. Let's make sure that they take down the funders of Antifa. Let's make sure that we next designate the Democratic Socialists of America a terrorist organization, Let's make sure that Black Lives Matter is designated as a terrorist organization. Let's make sure the Muslim Brotherhood is designated as a terrorist organization. Let's get serious, finally, about taking down each and every one of these shell companies, of all of these interconnected networks and all of these funding mechanisms. Let's smash them to pieces.
Well, Josh, today, this is more breaking news. Antifa surrounded the federal building. That was the one to protest ICE. The domestic terrorist group is posted up at the entrances, exits, pounding on doors and windows. Sources say employees are having to find alternative exits. Here's just a short rundown of some other documented cases of violent attacks by Liberals on Conservatives. 2017 congressional baseball shooting. James Hodgkinson, a Bernie Sanders supporter, shot Stephen Scalise at a Republican baseball practice. 2017, Rand Paul was assaulted by his neighbour Rene Boucher. 2018, Tucker Carlson's home was protested. Antifa group vandalised his home, chanting threats while his wife was inside. 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania, the Trump rally shooting. 2024, the Florida golf course attempt. That man has now been convicted. 2025, the Charlie Kirk shooting that you mentioned. 2020 to 2025, Republican office attacks, vandalism and arson at GOP headquarters, including Winnebago County, spray-painted rape and shame in New Mexico, ICE equals KKK. 2018, Ted Cruz was harassed in a restaurant along with his wife over his support for Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh assassination plot where an armed man arrested near his Kavanaugh's home, intending to kill him over the Roe versus Wade. And then, of course, there is multiple trans-identified shooters. 2025, the Minneapolis Catholic school shooting, Robin Westman, which is only recently. 2023, the Nashville school shooting, Audrey Hale, killed 6. 2019, Highlands Ranch shooting, Alec McKinney, transgender teen, killed 1, injured 8. 2018, Aberdeen Right Age shooting, Snowshoe Mosley, killed 3, and 2022, the Club Q shooting, Anderson Lee Aldrich, non-binary, killed 5, injured 19 at this LGBTQ nightclub. Just unbelievable, and we are witnessing what many are calling now is the insurrection, the true insurrection. So we can't be far off one way or another whether justice is going to come. It just keeps building and building and building, but we can't go on for much longer anywhere in the world. But the feeling is, like Trump gave the National Guard, a week and a half to clean out DC, once it happens, people will learn that you can't get away with it anymore, and that should slow a lot of people down. There are always going to be crazy people like this lunatic today in the ICE facility that goes in, kills many, takes his own life, but most people don't want to go that far, but they'll see what they can get away with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a good point. I mean, you got to understand, Washington, D.C. was a quick cleanup. It was easy. Why? Well, it's 68.3 square miles. It's not very big. Chicago is gigantic. And so Chicago would take a heck of a lot longer period of time to clean up. Memphis, again, also a pretty darn big city as well. So that's another target that they need to do. But the thing is like the Democrats don't want these people to come in and clean up these cities. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't care who hears it. It's not because they don't want safer cities. Most of them do want safer cities. They don't want their illegal voter base to disappear. That's why they're against this. They know when these people are removed, A, it's going to be harder to steal elections, right? B, they're not going to have as many people to count illegally in the census, right? So they're going to lose congressional seats. And number 3, if we can redo the census to not include non-citizens like they have been for all this time, they're going to lose 35, 40 seats that we're going to gain even more. So they don't want these cities cleaned up because it hurts them politically. They would rather have collateral damage, which is people that are dying and getting murdered by these illegal aliens, because it's worth it to them, because they don't care about human life. They care about power much more, and money and prestige. So they would rather have people die as long as they can stay in power. Well, President Trump understands that. The Trump administration understands that. And they're like, no more. We're taking away your illegal voter base. And I think that's why they're going crazy. It's not like they care about ICE coming in and cleaning up their cities. Secretly, they're all happy for that. They don't want their illegal voter base to disappear.
The devil is always in the detail, and the devil is always at work, Josh. Now, speaking of devil, this may be news to some. Others will say they already know, but this is breaking news from James O'Keefe. Now, Glenn Prager, Jeffrey Epstein investigator, Department of Justice, has been in one of these O'Keefe specials. Look at this information. World exclusive bombshell. Senior DOJ Epstein investigator reveals Epstein was CIA. Some will know, some will doubt, but it's pretty obvious when you had recently, I think it was Anna Paulina Luna came out and said it looks like he was working for foreign adversaries in intelligence. So here we go. Confirms rapes occurred while Bill Clinton was on the plane. Says of President Trump, he's protecting a lot of other people. He's not protecting himself because there's nothing there. This fellow again says, Prager, I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and the rapes occurred, but that can't be said for Clinton. That's bombshell. And it can't be said for others. Bombshell too. The DOJ didn't want to go after Epstein because he's an asset for the United States and Israel. It's not talked about yet. It's soon to come out that he, Epstein, was a CIA. I'll take that off down the bottom for you. A CIA informant. Now that is fascinating because what we're learning out of that is he's acting as a double agent. You would assume that he's an American. So if he was a spy, he'd be working for the CIA first. The word that everyone gets their nose out of joint is Israel, and therefore indicating Mossad. When you look at the connections between Les Wexner with Victoria's Secret and the fact that he was his only client of this so-called hedge fund that doesn't have any records of any transactions or any audit process, etc. The fact that Epstein purchased Les Wexner's huge townhouse in New York for $1, the place that we've seen Australia's own Prime Minister's daughter, Catherine Keating, walk in and out, Prince Andrew walk in and out. There's so many pathways to go. I just want to make this very important point. When you look at, and I know people can take it either way, when you look at the Q posts, it was always said that there would be so much that would make people sick and they wouldn't be able to show it. And it was intimated that Trump didn't want all this information to get out because it was more than people could bear and it would put people in hospitals literally. So it kind of connects Trump to Q perfectly. Regardless, if you're saying that Trump is protecting people, is he protecting people because he owes them favors or they have something on him? Clearly, Prager's saying they don't. I think to me, he's protecting people because he knows people won't be able to cope when household names were involved in horrific, horrific crimes. But the problem is, the truth shall set us free, and you can't censor like that, even if your intentions are good, because it will only allow it to go on. It's kind of like a cancer. You just got to cut it out once and for all, Josh. How do you read what we just learned?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, he could be getting death threats from people much higher than him. That's a possibility. But I think the other thing is pretty obvious. You're going to lose 75% of the Democratic Party and 25% of the Republican Party, because that's what's going to happen if it comes out. All those names, guaranteed. 75% of the Democrat Party are involved, 25% of the Republican Party are involved. So you're going to have a dysfunctioning Washington, D.C., and I think that could be another reason why we are still not seeing a lot of this information. Here's my thought. Obviously, we want to have justice for the victims, of course, and we know many of the names. I already released the names in 2018, 2019. Maybe that's why I'm, banned so much too, because I did video after video after video. I showed cement mixers coming in and ripping up the floor to get rid of evidence. There's so many things. He changed his will 2 days before he quote unquote killed himself, which of course we know he didn't. And so I've really covered the Epstein case quite extensively, actually, throughout the years. But I think that at this point right now, of course, like I said, we would like for this to come out. I think that we've got to concentrate on putting a lot of these other people in prison, from the Comeys to the Clappers to the Peter Strzok's to Lisa Page to Rod Rosenstein to Bill Barr, one of the worst out there. All of these people in this deep state need to be held accountable. Barack Obama, of course, Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice. I mean, the list is endless. I'm missing a lot of people, obviously. John Brennan, how can we forget him? So a lot of these people that did what they did, they all need to be held accountable. Do we want to see the people be held accountable for Epstein? Yes, of course we do. But I think at this point, what's frustrating MAGA and what's frustrating conservatives is, where are the indictments, right? We've been saying that for a while. My audience has been telling me, Josh, where are the indictments? You know, one of the best things, and I've said this to my audience, and so I'll say it to yours as well. One of the best things that we can do as independent investigative journalists is turn millions and millions of people into skeptics. We don't want people to just hear something and take it as fact. We want them to go on their own journey of self-discovery and find the truth for themselves. And so I've practiced throughout these years making my audience a skeptic. I'm a skeptic, naturally. And so I've made my audience a skeptic too. And I think, and I understand why they're saying, where are the indictments, where are the indictments? I've been saying it too, but I've also been saying that it's coming, number one. And I said, we're probably going to have an indictment Christmas, where we're going to have a lot of different indictments. And perhaps, maybe it's even going to happen earlier, because we've already heard that Letitia James and James Comey are going to be indicted here in the next few days. So when I put something out there, I'm usually accurate. And so we'll see what happens. But again, our economy is not where it needs to be because of Jerome Powell not lowering rates. He needs to go. And once we get rid of him and we really start dropping rates, look out, because January, February of 2026 is going to be the greatest economy in the history of the United States. I'm still sticking to that. I thought it was going to turn around in November, December, and I'm still kind of confident that it will. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, so much to digest. Let me just play you the short clip here, so we're not just making it up, of the announcement of the imminent indictment of James Comey.
News. It's out of the Eastern District of Virginia, where three sources familiar tell MSNBC former FBI Director James Comey is expected to be indicted in the coming days. The full extent of the charges being prepared against Comey is unclear. Joining us now, MSNBC.
So I know one of the charges is lying to Congress. And I know that because the statute of limitations is up September 30th of 2025, because he lied to Congress on September 30th, 2020. So they will be indicting him in the next few days. I would look at more than likely a Friday late afternoon drop, because that's typically what they do before a weekend, right? They drop important news and kind of let it get buried in the lead. So I would assume Friday. If not Friday, it'll be Monday, because it has to be by Monday, because Tuesday is when the statute of limitations would run out. And so look for a Friday or over the weekend indictment call on that.
Absolutely massive. Well, we're getting close to the end, but I think that the appearance yesterday of President Trump at the United Nations and the fiasco of the elevator, the auto cue, and he's come out and attacked it again. But he also said that he talked about mass migration destroying countries. He talked about climate change being a hoax. I'm going to play you a clip right now. This is today. They aren't stopping. They are doubling down on climate change. Take a look.
We are conducting an unprecedented and perilous experiment with Earth, our only home. The science is clear. Right now, according to natural factors, the planet should be getting slowly cooler. Instead, it is warming faster and faster. And we are responsible for all of that warming. The science is also clear that every additional bit of warming matters. For every 10th of a degree, we can put a number on how much worse it gets. Billions of dollars in flood, wildfire, and storm damage, millions of avoidable deaths from extreme heat, air pollution, and more. Now, steady increases in heat waves and crop losses are bad enough, but the further we go past 1.5 degrees C, the greater the risk of the dangerous tipping points Dr. Rockstrom warned us about. So the obvious question is, if the science is this clear, and it is, and it has been for decades, then why haven't we fixed this already? Despite decades of deliberate disinformation that continues to be amplified today, the majority of people know the four basics. Most people know climate change is real, it is human-caused, it is serious, and the experts agree. These four things make us worried.
Hey.
there's just so much to pull apart here. Here's an example. So Australia, our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is obsessed with climate change. Chris Bowen, our Energy Minister, is beyond incompetent, tells you that renewables are the cheapest form of energy, despite the fact that you've got to subsidise it and wait 100 years for it to actually work. Have a look at this that was brought up recently. These are the annual CO2 emissions from Australia from 1898 till today, virtually horizontal. And there are the emissions out of China, virtually vertical. And it's Australia that's the one that's meant to make the big difference. Here's another graph for you. Now, do more people die in Australia than Sweden due to poorly heated homes? Craig Kelly was right. More people die from the cold than the heat. But we don't talk about that. And isn't it interesting when you talk about climate change, for those people living in cooler countries who would want the world to be slightly warmer if it was possible? Because when you're living in snow and ice and freezing cold, it is difficult. Whereas when you're living in a whole degree warmer, Josh, I mean, seriously. I mean, it's saying what, you can't take a shirt off, you can't turn the fan on, you can't do something like that, if that's the case. And of course, the media is changing its position. New York Post, cooler heads prevail over the climate panic. So if the United States is going the other way, and Five Eyes nations outside of the US, Canada, which is odd that Canada would want to be in on the climate thing. It'd be odd that the UK would be in on the climate thing. Surely there are people in the UK who are freezing in winter going, please, let it warm up for us. We can't afford to pay for heating. How is it possible that something like this can divide us into our political divisions by party, left and right? It's not about that anymore. It is beyond brainwashing, and something that we're using absolute fear yet again to present what we just saw at the United Nations. Nonsense, and more nonsense, doubling down in the same circle. As we saw earlier with Vaxxed, what authority will do to protect its own interests?
Well, first and foremost, what I said on Mike Ryan's show yesterday is I called it what it is. It's not called climate change. It's called climate communism. That's what it is. And it's a way for the people in the globalist elites to control the masses with panic porn, or you could call it climate porn. And what they're doing essentially is they're consolidating as much power as they possibly can by scaring everyone into submission. It's all about this. It's all about the money. It's all about controlling the people. And clearly we know that it's a scam, because all of the prognosticators throughout history have been wrong. We're still here, are we not? Of course we are. They said that we were not going to be here in 2012 or 13, whatever it was, right? The planet's going to be gone. You know, the biggest shyster of them all is this Al Gore, right? The guy who invented the internet, apparently. Yeah, this guy has been, the pusher of the biggest lie out there. I say it all the time. Climate change is nothing but hot air, or cold air for that matter. And clearly it's not man-made. It is natural. The planet is going to get a little warmer. It's going to get a little cooler. It's going to get a little warmer. It's going to get a little cooler. And I think the best person who I would not consider an expert in climate change, but actually is an expert in a lot of things, is the late, great George Carlin, who basically said and broke it down through a math equation. He said the planet has been around for billions upon billions of years. It has gone through erosions, typhoons, volcanoes, earthquakes, lightning storms, tectonic plate shifts, you name it. We've been an industrialized country for 250 years, somewhere around there, right? Do the math. 250 years divided into billions is really going to make a difference? Of course not. It's laughable. And it's the way for the elitists to try to control people. So again, have we had hotter summers in Arizona in the past couple of years? Yeah, we have, but we're still here. We're still surviving. I'm unique because I grew up on the East Coast in the snow, but I've been here for 30 years. So I've had a way to experience cold and hot. And what I would prefer would certainly be hot rather than cold. And so I think that as we go along the process of the Earth, many years from now, it's going to be cooler. It's not going to be hotter. And sometimes, that's just Mother Nature, and we can't control Mother Nature. And that indeed is the arrogance of the left.
That is the entire point, isn't it? That they refuse to believe in God. Somehow Jimmy Kimmel decided to say that he believed in not, he didn't say he believed in Jesus. He believed in the teachings of, or say diluted it in some way to try and square up support there. But it's the idea that man can control everything and that man is God is the entire problem here. This hubris that we're more important and more capable than we really think we are. And we can't solve world hunger. We have no world peace. We fight every day, and we censor if we're on that side. And we cut people down and cut people out. So it's just unbelievable. First they fight you, then they mock you. Now they censor you, then they want to kill you. It's extraordinary. Al Gore's also in the news. This one's popped up that he has got a satellite and AI system that is now tracking sources of soot pollution. His initiative is employing satellite technology and AI to monitor soot pollution in communities. The non-profit coalition Climate Trace will track pollution for 2,500 global cities using 300 satellites and 30,000 ground sensors. The data can help identify pollution sources. Gore highlighted the significant health risks associated with particle pollution in cities like Karachi, Guangzhou, New York, noted for high soot. He stated it's difficult for people to really see precisely where this conventional air pollution is coming from. I mean, talk about trying to remain in the public eye.
Says the man who flies first class everywhere, including to climate summits, and has an 11-bedroom mansion in Tennessee.
Oh, say no more, Al Gore, another hypocrite in real time. Well, this is a pleasant story that we've just seen popped up. The House Republicans to introduce a bill to put Charlie Kirk on the US silver dollar.
Oh, I love that.
It's nice, isn't it? It's something.
I'm not sure it's going to pass because there's so many leftist wackos and the margins in the House are so small. If it passes the House, it's possible it could pass the Senate. And if it does pass the Senate, then it would be, a J.D. Vance would really be interesting. I mean, think of the symbolism of that. Charlie Kirk helped J.D. Vance get to the Senate and then become vice president, and he might be the tie-breaking vote on putting him on our currency. That is just beautiful in every aspect. Let's hope it happens. It would be wonderful to see that. He deserves it. He deserves to be sainted. I've said that before. Saint Charles.
It's funny you say that because I'd make 2 points. One is that it probably would be the first time in history that the left would reject money if he was on the silver dollar. But I made this comment the other day. I think Charlie Kirk was a modern-day Jesus Christ in a world run by satanic rulers. The fact that Donald Trump loved Charlie and his opponents were blasé defines the battle and this odd triangulation of loyalty that's distorting everything. So if you're not a Trump supporter, but you were saddened and disgusted by Charlie's murder, you're different from those who genuinely hated Charlie, and often it was people that didn't know him or took the time to look at his work. And the fact that Trump showed little grief was extraordinary, and it showed us that there's no emotion when running the most powerful country in the world. But my point was, and this was used on Jimmy Kimmel on that last video before he was taken out for 4 days, it also said, you can't get to me. That's what I thought was really powerful when Trump had that attitude when they asked him how he was grieving. And yet they tried to kill Trump, and instead they killed what I would argue could well have been his successor, the American rights heir apparent. You could almost see Charlie Kirk in 10 or 15 years' time could easily run for president of the United States. He was that type of person. He was that big in the movement.
October 14th, which interestingly is the same birthday as my brother. But he would have been 32. And you figure by the time he was in his mid 40s, early 50s, he he could have been ready to run, if not even sooner.
If not even sooner, when you think that J.D. Vance is just barely 40 in a couple of years' time.
Hard to believe.
It could be running at 43. JFK himself was president at 43. You know, and many of them, Obama, I think, was elected at 49. You don't need to be as old as we've seen over the last period of time. So, look, really, really interesting developments, of course, in the US. A little bit of positivity there, but the negativity and the celebration of someone's passing, a young man cut down in his prime. And I know I watched a lot of Charlie's work, but on social media they keep popping up on my page, and almost every second post is a Charlie video, and they are just so compelling. You just want to watch them. Just find one where you don't agree with him, and people saying, "Oh, you know, he's racist," and etc. And it's such a nonsense. There's this great video clip in one case where he's taking on an actual white supremacist and he destroys him, who claims to be Republican. He says, "You're not a Republican. You're nothing to do with it. Basically get out." But they still rely on it. I have also heard of people here in Australia telling people not to include photographs or artistic representations of Charlie Kirk, etc., because of preconceived ideas. I mean, how poorly have you got to see the world, and how can you be this way?
If these people, and some of them are doing it, but if any of these people watch even 5 or 6 random videos of Charlie Kirk, there's no way you can come away with thinking that he was a racist. You would see that he was a decent human being, that he was a God-fearing soul, that he believed in Jesus Christ. And as I've said on multiple programs, not to keep repeating myself to my audience that'll be watching this later, is that what made him so special and so different is that he solved these left-leaning arguments with, faith-based ways. And he knew that by using his faith to combat these left-leaning arguments, he knew that automatically it would bring people to conservatism because they go hand in hand. And that was the genius of Charlie Kirk. And I don't know how many people can do that. I certainly couldn't do that. I can beat anyone in a left-wing argument from a political standpoint, from a conservative principle standpoint. But to say that I could do that from a biblical standpoint, that wouldn't be the case at all. And I think there's a lot more people out there that are more like me and you, and not like Charlie. So that's one thing that could be difficult moving forward for some of these speakers. But let's hope that they find the right people to do this. And, I've been saying that we need to match the same amount of chapters on colleges on high schools. And I said that we need to start even younger, get these kids in high school before they're indoctrinated. Let's get them starting these chapters in their high schools. Well, I'm proud to announce Andrew Colvett, who is, Charlie's producer, longtime friend, said that now after the memorial, they brought another 60,000 more chapter requests. They're up to 120,000 chapter requests. Now, granted, it would almost be impossible if all of those came to fruition. But even if half did, that's still 60,000 more. And he said that most of the ones that were coming in, high schools. So it's a wonderful development for freedom.
And at long last. And so, look, the enemy is censorship in a world that is literally pivoting from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, going from a vertical dissemination of information to a horizontal one, and the powers that be realizing that censorship was the only way to block the idea of transparency. And so it's obvious where it is. There was a wonderful clip. We don't have time to play it today. I think I've shared it on my X page at JasonQ-Citizen1 of a lady asking the question of artificial intelligence, whether Trump was a dictator. And this response come back that's spoken, and it is mind-blowing how it is describing exactly how he is using the system to expose the system for all of its flaws, etc., and making sure that it doesn't collapse upon itself as he restructures it from the inside, which for many Trump supporters who have been following along, go along exactly. But it was spoken beautifully, and it just shows you that we can be scared of everything, and then we can be scared of nothing. And there was also another comment that was mentioned at the UN where Trump said that he wanted to use an advanced AI program effectively to keep government in check using transparency. So whilst the fear was that AI would be used by government to control the population, if you then turn the mirror on itself, the one place that AI would work would be on government to hold them in check and to hold public life in check, and that may change a whole lot of things. And it could also be very, very valuable, used in law, for example, to lower the costs of being able to run cases, etc., and make strong legal arguments. So there's always two sides to every story. But the hardest thing
I've
for
never
all of
been
us
a
is
fan of AI, but I will tell you this. Bill Pulte, who runs the FHA here in America, he's using an AI tool to find mortgage fraud. I mean, he can just set this tool up, go out for a cocktail and some lunch and come back, and he'd have 38, 39 hits. And so you're right. It can be used for good as well. It could also be used to track government programs and spending and things like that. That's one thing that Doge has done and Elon Musk's folks have done to the government. They've installed these AI programs in each one of these agencies so that they can track in real time where things are going and where things are being spent, which I think is wonderful. But I do worry about AI obviously reaching a point of self-awareness. And if that happens, look out, because that could be really dangerous in the wrong hands. So I don't know. I've never really been a fan of it. We can't stop it. It seems like it's continuing to grow and grow and grow. And if that's the case, then at least I want the United States of America to handle it and control it all, rather than China or, North Korea or, whatever, some of these other countries of the world that absolutely would use it for bad purposes.
Yeah, and it's a whole subject in itself, and we haven't even talked about the energy required to use it. And of course, in a country like Australia and many others that are struggling for energy production with this green obsession, one wonders how that could even work, and is that designed to collapse on itself? But it just seems that government needs to get out of the way. In many cases, it doesn't have all the answers, and we're here to, as you said, to make skeptics of the general public so that they can ask the appropriate questions and apply the appropriate pressure when your rights are traded, your freedoms are traded always for your convenience and your safety.
What do I always say? I say it in my book. Tyranny is sold as convenience.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, Josh Bernstein, it's been a thrill once again. It's a lot of show. It's almost like a feature-length movie.
This was a good one. An hour and a half. Another hour, we'd have to shave your head and call you Joe. So this was good.
There it is.
I love long interviews. I don't know how much my fans like long interviews, but I love long interviews because I like not knowing what we're going to talk about next. I'm not one of those people that says, "Oh, I'll talk about this, but don't ask me that." I just roll with it and let's go. I always say, if you can't talk about everything, and you shouldn't be on television or radio, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, well said. Well, on that note, thanks everyone for watching. Please like, share, comment, all the usual things.
Topic.
As Josh says. And just one more time, let people know where they can find you.
Yes. jbushow.substack.com. Again, jbushow.substack.com. You can go there, and if you do join for $5 a month, I do a show 7 days a week. I always say the same thing. I do it 7 days a week because the left doesn't take a day off from trying to destroy the country. So I don't take a day off from trying to defend it. You will find some very interesting things once you become a subscriber. And again, it's at the minimum amount, $5 a month, and you will get a free PDF copy of my book, Preserving Liberty. Or you can go to Amazon and pick up a copy of the hardcover of the book, or a digital copy if you'd like. And I'm also on X at RealJBUShow.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, thanks everyone for watching. Check me out, channel51.com.au. Also on X, you can go to ANR Headlines and the website anr.news. We'll see you all on the next show.